know why you're here, Mr. Wordsworth?
Yes, sir.
I'd ask you to speak up a little, if you will.
Yes, sir. I know why I am here.
You've been under investigation, Mr. Wordsworth, for the mandatory period of 1 year and 11 months. You're found to be obsolete. The purpose of this hearing is to make a finding in the matter and make a sentence accordingly. Do you understand that?
I understand that.
Your occupation, Mr. Wordsworth?
A radio talk show host.
What?
A radio talk show host, sir.
I'm told you've had counsel and been given orientation, Mr. Wordsworth, but I'm still not sure in my own mind that you understand the purpose of this hearing. The field investigators in your sector have classified you as obsolete. This finding carries with it serious implications. Do you understand that, Mr. Wordsworth? Now I ask you again, your occupation?
I am a radio talk show host. That is my occupation, my profession. If you people choose to call that obsolete...
Request clarification of the term? Yes, the term. Mr. Wordsworth, you people, you make reference to the state?
I make reference to the state.
And you persist in declaring your occupation, correct?
That is correct.
A minister would tell us that his function is that of preaching the word of God. And of course it follows that since the state has proven that there is no God, that would make the function of a minister somewhat academic as well.
There is a God.
You are in error, Mr. Wordsworth. There is no God. The state has proven that there is no God.
You cannot erase God with an edict.
You are obsolete, Mr. Wordsworth. You have no function, Mr. Wordsworth. You're an anachronism, like a ghost from another time.
I am nothing more than a reminder to you that you cannot destroy truth.
You're a bug, Mr. Wordsworth, a crawling insect, an ugly, misformed little creature who has no purpose here, no meaning.
I am a human being. I exist. And if I speak one thought out loud, that thought exists, even after I'm shoveled into my grave.
Delusions, Mr. Wordsworth. Delusions, the Bible, poetry, essays, all kind, all of it opiate to make you think you have a strength when you have no strength at all. You have nothing but spindly limbs and a dream, and the state has no use for your kind.
Yeah? Well, we're gonna have to do something about that. This is RiverWestRadio.com, community-supported radio streaming live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm your host. My name is Michael Wordsworth, and welcome to Breaking Down the News, the show that presents the news highlights of the week, but with a twist. Breaking Down the News is more concerned in bringing you information that wasn't covered on the front pages. Headlines you don't want to miss, because not listening could be dangerous to your freedom, liberty, and health. Welcome to Breaking Down the News on this Friday edition, June 21st, 2012. I am Michael Wordsworth, and these are words worth listening to. It's a hot topic in Milwaukee. Big meeting at City Hall yesterday. Even MSNBC reported that Alderman Jim Bowl, along with expert Dr. Paul Connett, leads the crusade with this petition to end water fluoridation in Milwaukee. And we should thank these noble men for their efforts. They are truly heroes in my book. And River West Radio was very, very excited to receive confirmation that both Alderman Jim Bowl and Dr. Connett will be appearing on Breaking Down the News. That is correct. You heard me right. Dr. Paul Connett emailed this morning and confirmed he will be on our show this Monday, coming up June the 4th at 3:30 p.m. Our local hero, Alderman Bowl, has agreed to be interviewed also, but we do not yet have a time set. He has been very busy, understandably, but he will be here, and we thank him for all his efforts. Many listening out there know this issue well, and I am sure you have been as elated as I have at the latest push to end this madness. If you don't know the horrible facts behind water fluoridation, you will be glad you tuned into this show today. Our own local news media were no help on this crucial issue. WTMJ and JS Online gave a lopsided view that lacked facts and was filled with ambivalent statements, unsupported and undocumented lies. It was a pathetic article. The only halfway decent quote was from Dr. Osmundson. Dr. Osmundson is an expert on this topic, and their quote, Dr. Osmond, whose cited research say there is no benefit to swallowing fluoride. Dr. Osmundson argued that fluoridated water isn't safe to ingest because the FDA says you shouldn't swallow fluoride contained in toothpaste. But the article stopped short of saying why you shouldn't swallow fluoride-laden toothpaste. They didn't mention the poison warning on the label. On the side of the toothpaste tube, the label language, quote, it says on all these tubes, if you accidentally swallow more than used for brushing, seek professional help or contact a poison control center immediately. That is now required on all fluoride toothpaste. Back in 1991, the American Dental Association began requiring that toothpaste manufacturers include the following language on all ADA-accepted toothpaste. Quote, do not swallow. Use only a pea-sized amount for children under 6. To prevent swallowing, children under 6 years of age should be supervised in the use of toothpaste. Since when? Since when is that necessary? Well, since 1991, the ADA began putting that on there. Why? Because they've got poison in the toothpaste. The new FDA labels are consistent with the ADA statements with the exception of the poison control warning. The ADA warning labels were required to help reduce the risk of mild fluorosis, which is a cosmetic defect noticeable as very light spots on permanent teeth and develops only while the teeth are still forming. Fluorosis only occurs when more than the optimal daily amount of fluoride is ingested. Well, if you're going to the dentist, you're getting extra fluoride injections using your toothpaste. It's got fluoride in there. And the city water supply has fluoride in it. It's absorbed into your vegetables when you cook. You're cooking your noodles, your vegetables, anything in that water. You're just lacing it up with your nice, healthy dose of fluoride. Well, through the American Dental Association Seal of Acceptance program, the toothpaste manufacturers must submit clinical data to the ADA in order to meet its guidelines on safety and effectiveness. Additionally, all products with the American Dental Association seal must submit the product's advertising and packaging for review so that consumers and dentists have assurance that the claims the product makes are supported by clinical data. Well, the Journal Sentinel Online website had two other opinion articles that I checked out. One was by Jim Bowl himself and was a very informative, strong stance against water fluoridation. The other opinion disagreed. So I went to that webpage and had to read what it said. Guess what? I can't find an author behind this opinion. Maybe I'm missing something, but I looked all over the webpage for someone endorsing this opinion as their own. All I could find was Our View / Dental Health. I mean, who's us? The title of this anonymous opinion article read, Stick with fluoridation, it's safe and it works. That's a very simple, direct lie. That's how good propaganda is, simple and direct. The first line appearing under the big picture of this anonymous article was of a water faucet, and it with water coming down in these hands and the toothbrush. It looked very nice and very solid. And it read, right underneath, the little tagline, we'll stick with the consensus of the U.S. healthcare establishment. Oh, really? Community water fluoridation is safe and it works to help reduce tooth decay. Does it? Well, those are unsubstantiated claims. Who are the we that they're talking about? We'll stick with our consensus. Nobody's name appeared there. At least Jim Bowl stands behind his own message personally. You have to respect that, whether you think he's correct or not. The next two paragraphs in this opinion article from Journal Sentinel Online were beset with false logic, and I'd like to pick it apart for you now. I quote the first paragraph. Milwaukee Alderman Jim Bowl wanted the city of Milwaukee to stop fluoridating its water. He said fluoridation is ineffective and potentially dangerous to those who ingest it. And he's right. course, the article didn't say that, but that's my comment. The article went on to say he brought in several witnesses to testify to a Common Council committee meeting on Thursday, and he has the 2.5-inch thick binder filled with documents that support his position. Well, okay, you know why he has a 2.5-inch thick binder of documented arguments against this case? Because he can. There is that much evidence and more. The other side only claims to have 3,000 reviews, but where are they? They could have brought them. That would have been prudent since this was a debate. The side on the case against the issue only has two main weapons to debate with. Number one, the overwhelming magnitude of this lie. It has been believed by former and current generations. But remember, Hitler's propaganda minister said that the bigger the lie, the more believed it will be, accepted by the ignorant masses. Number two in their propaganda techniques, the continued propaganda won't argue actual facts with facts. Their case is a paper tiger that folds and collapses the moment anyone actually looks at the data. I'm going to go over that point more in a minute, but let me get to the second paragraph of this weak opinion column's argument. Here it reads, but with all due respect to Bohl's impressive passion on this issue, they didn't even call him Alderman Bohl. With all due respect to Bohl's impressive passion on this issue, until real peer-reviewed scientific studies done in the United States show that fluoridation doesn't work and it's dangerous, we'll stick with the consensus of the U.S. healthcare establishment, and that is that fluoridation is safe in modest amounts and it works to help reduce tooth decay, especially in urban areas and among populations that don't receive adequate dental care. Oh yeah? Really? Really? I've got some real facts for you today. Actual peer-reviewed journals, scientific data. The whole issue of why this propaganda has been put out since the 50s is amazing. I mean, I'm going to go over the history of this later next week on several episodes when we have Dr. Paul Conant appear on this show and Alderman Jim Bohl. For the meantime, here's Dr. Edwin Groth, senior scientist, Consumers Union. In 1991, he said, the political pro-fluoridation stance has evolved into a dogmatic, authoritarian, essentially anti-scientific posture, one that discourages open debate of scientific issues. That was in 1991. Here from the Chemical and Engineering News, August 1st, 1988, journal editors often have refused, for political reasons, to publish information that raises questions about fluoridation. This one's from Dr. Sheldon Krimsky, Tufts University, August 16, 2004. Quote, we are left with compelling evidence that powerful interests with high financial stakes have colluded to prematurely close honest discussion and investigation into fluoride toxicity. This one from Ralph Nader, consumer advocate back in 1971. This has been an issue for a long time. He says, quote from Ralph Nader, the Public Health Service, unfortunately, has locked itself into a position where it has made this statement on the record that there is absolutely no hazard to fluoridating public water supplies, and the matter is closed. Now, that, of course, is immediately an unscientific approach, says Ralph Nader. The anonymous journal opinion stated Alderman Bohl showed up with a 2-inch thick booklet of documentation, but there are literally over 2,000 peer-reviewed studies against fluoride. My rebuttal includes some real peer-reviewed journals that I have selected excerpts from. I obtained them from Dr. Paul Conant's website, the Fluoride Action Network, which you will find at fluoridealert.org. Thank you. Here are some excerpts from actual scientific literature covering recent surveys of water fluoridation tooth decay. I can only fight you science with science here. They're the facts. If you don't want to accept it, keep drinking the poison water. And then this comes from a source from Hong L. Levy, S. Warren, and J. Broffett B. Dental caries and fluorosis in relation to water fluoride levels. It was from a conference in Orlando, Florida on March 8th to 11th, 2006. I quote their documentation. This study assessed the relationship between dental caries and fluorosis at varying fluoride levels in drinking water. Methods: subjects were followed from birth with questionnaires every 3 to 4 months to gather information on fluoride intake. 420 study subjects received dental examinations at age 5 on primary teeth and at age 9 on early erupting permanent teeth. Conclusions? Fluorosis prevalence increased significantly with higher water fluoride levels. However, caries prevalence did not decline significantly. Graphs of tooth decay trends for 12-year-olds in 24 countries prepared using the most recent World Health Organization data show that the decline in dental decay in recent decades has been comparable in 16 non-fluoridated countries and 8 fluoridated countries which met the inclusion criteria of having 1, a mean annual per capita income in the year 2000 of U.S. $10,000 or more, a population in the year 2000 of greater than 3 million, and suitable World Health Organization caries data available. The World Health Organization data do not support fluoridation as being a reason for the decline in dental decay in 12-year-olds that has been occurring in recent decades. Source from Neurath, 2005, tooth decay trends for 12-year-olds in non-fluoridated and fluoridated countries. Here we go. Lifetime exposure to fluoridation is associated with average reductions of 2.0 DMFS. I'm going to go into what the DMFS is. Sure. DMFS is an actual measurement of the decayed, missing, and filled surfaces. It's a very scientific matter. The argument is that fluoride prevents tooth decay. Well, one way to tell that would be to assess the surface layer of the tooth. The way that scientists use this, they call it the decayed, missing, and filled surfaces quotient. There are 128 tooth surfaces in a child's mouth. This study found a difference of 0.12 to 0.30 decayed surfaces out of 128 between children in fluoridated and unfluoridated communities. That source is from Spencer A. J., Water Fluoridation in Australia, Community Dental Health, from 1996. Here's one from the source Von Berg, MM, Baby Bottle Tooth Decay, a concern for all mothers. It's a pediatric nursing article. They quote, an analysis of national survey data collected by the National Institute of Dental Research concludes that children who live in areas of the U.S. where the water supplies are fluoridated have tooth decay rates nearly identical with those who live in non-fluoridated areas. Well, that's pretty conclusive, isn't it? Well, it doesn't stop there. There are so many scientists, dentists, and researchers in on this issue since the 50s. Here's some key findings of water fluoridation and tooth decay right off the bat. Number 1, the addition of fluoride to water for the purpose of preventing tooth decay began in the 1940s with the belief that fluoride's primary benefit came from ingestion of fluoride during the tooth-forming years. It is now acknowledged by the dental research community, however, that fluoride's primary benefits come from topical contact with teeth and not from ingestion as previously assumed. It is also now acknowledged that fluoride is ineffective at preventing tooth decay in the pits and fissures of teeth where the majority of decay occurs. It is well recognized that tooth decay rates declined quite dramatically in all Western countries in the latter half of the 20th century, irrespective of whether the country fluoridated its water or not. Today, tooth decay rates throughout the continental Western Europe, where 98% of the population does not drink fluoridated water, are as low as the tooth decay rates in the United States, where a majority of the populations drink fluoridated water. Within countries that fluoridate their water, recent large-scale surveys of dental health utilizing modern scientific methods not employed in the early surveys from the 30s to the 50s have found little difference in tooth decay, including baby bottle tooth decay between fluoridated and unfluoridated communities. The largest dental survey ever conducted in the United States by the National Institute of Dental Research in 1986 to 1987 found no difference in decayed, missing, and filled teeth, and a minimal difference in decayed, missing, and filled surfaces among children who had lived their entire lives in a fluoridated or unfluoridated community. Since 2000, 4 studies have reported that tooth decay does not increase but continues to decrease after water fluoridation is stopped. It is becoming evident, however, that water fluoridation has been ineffective at preventing widespread tooth decay in poor urban areas of the United States, most of which have been fluoridated for up to 20 to 50 years. What are the potential risks from consuming fluoridated water? Well, recent studies in the peer-reviewed medical literature indicate that fluoridated water can have detrimental side effects. Health risks associated low to moderate doses of fluoride include dental fluorosis, bone fracture, bone cancer, joint pain, skin rash, reduced thyroid activity, and IQ deficits. That's right, it affects your IQ. So does high fructose corn syrup, a study I read about the rats. You know what helps your IQ? Omega-3s, fatty acids, good stuff. Is fluoridated water safe for babies? That's a great question. I mean, if you don't care about yourself as an adult, perhaps you should think of your children, your pets. My goodness, your pets that can't even decide for them, and the babies. Is fluoridated water safe for babies? Well, no. According to the American Dental Association, I mean, geez, it's the American Dental Association. Children under the 1 year of age should not receive infant formula made with fluoridated water. I mean, it's insane. If a baby doesn't even have teeth, why do they have fluoride in the water? And if you go into some of these ghetto marts these days, you know what I'm talking about, the little convenience stores located in the the poor urban areas. It's so sick to read that they have special water for babies. They got this cute pink label with this cute picture of a baby on there, and it says, fluoride added for your baby. The child has no teeth. I mean, ingesting it, sorry, I get really upset over that one. Babies exposed to fluoridated water are at a high risk of developing dental fluorosis, a tooth defect caused by fluoride-induced cell damage within the teeth. Other harm is also likely, according, for example, to the U.S. National Research Council, quote, it is apparent that fluorides can interfere with the functions of the brain. It actually attacks the pineal gland, among other things, calcifies the pineal gland. They go on, the danger that fluoride poses to the brain is likely greatest during fetal and infant development, as during this time the barrier which protects the child brain from environmental toxins is not yet fully formed. Thus, chemicals that find their way into a baby's bloodstream can penetrate into their poor little brains. Dr. Paul Connett, for those of you who have not heard of him, he is the nation's foremost expert on this subject, and you can get the actual facts on his website, fluoridealert.org. And fluoride is spelled F-L-U-O-R-I-D-E, alert.org. Just go to his website for the whole history of fluoridation. The health effects are astounding, tons of documentation, unquestionable studies. Fluorosilicic acid is a toxic sedative. Big pharmaceutical companies put it in some of their psych meds for this reason, but make no mistake, fluorosilicic acid is toxic. and it attacks every cell in the body, every cell and organ in the body. Well, as a special treat for those of you listening today, I have assembled professional perspectives on water fluoridation, and I'd like to play it for you. It's 28 minutes long, and it is packed full of it. My son listened to it earlier this afternoon, and he said, actually, this is informative. He really enjoyed it and was entertained by it. So without further ado, I present to you some actual professionals discussing this topic. I'm Michael Wordsworth. You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. We'll be back in a minute right after this incredibly informative interview.
The dental community.
As a result of fluoridation, our children will be healthier and happier.
There is no health hazard that justifies postponing water fluoridation.
You're not dealing with a benign substance.
There's much too much risk for too little benefit.
Fluoride is safe.
They decided far too early, before the science was properly in, that fluoridation was a good thing.
The dental community has no idea of the toxicology behind fluoride.
Fluoride does not just affect the teeth.
Fluoride is a neurotoxin.
This is being drank by so many people throughout the U.S. every day.
But who's responsible? Who's the doctor making sure we're not getting too much?
The weight of evidence actually is more in the favor of fluoride doing damage than against.
This is against all principles of modern pharmacology. It's really obsolete.
Water fluoridation is the practice of adding fluoride compounds to the public water supplies for the purpose of reducing tooth decay. The policy, which began in the United States in the 1940s, has been hailed by the Oral Health Division of the United States Centers for Disease Control as one of the top 10 public health achievements of the 20th century. However, a growing body of science indicates that fluoridation is neither safe nor effective. In this video, we examine why over 2,000 health, scientific, medical, dental, and environmental professionals are calling for an end to fluoridation worldwide.
Water fluoridation is the dispensing of a drug.
This is a way of delivering a medicine.
Fluoride is a drug, is a medicine.
Fluoride is being put in specifically to alter you physically, to make a physical change in you.
This is not chlorine. This is not any number of the other chemicals that are used to treat the water, make the water safe and drinkable.
It's not like chlorine used to make the water supply safe and kill the bugs in the water supply.
This is the only thing anywhere in the world that gets added to the municipal drinking waters to actually treat the human, to treat the body.
There is absolutely no drug on the market that's given in a one-dose-fits-all situation.
It's absolutely obsolete. It's in modern pharmacology, it's so clear that even if you have a fixed dose of a drug, the individuals respond very differently to one and the same dose. Now in this case, you have it in the water and people are drinking different amounts of water, so you have huge variations in the consumption.
You can have an athlete, a laborer, who are drinking many, many times the amount of water. You can have someone who's diabetic, who's drinking a ton of water compared to the average.
I mean, the whole name of the game in pharmacology is to deliver the right dose to the right person at the right time. And that's not what fluoridation does. It can't do it.
I would prefer an individual use approach. I would have no problem with a doctor or dentist prescribing fluoride for a patient that he was keeping in touch with and monitoring for possible side effects and for the efficacy of the drug. That's essentially what's done with any other drug, and that's the way it should be done for fluoride. We don't put other things in the water to try to keep everybody's blood pressure down or everybody's stroke risk down, and there's no reason why we should be trying a one-size-fits-all approach for this either.
The problem with adding medicine to water is an obvious one of consent, that people can't give their informed consent, which is a basic of medical ethics.
We're allowing communities to do to everybody in the community what an individual doctor cannot do to an individual patient, and that is prescribe medication regardless of the informed consent of the patient.
What physician that you know in his right mind would treat somebody whose medical history he doesn't know, who he's never met, with a substance that's meant to do change in their bodies, and just with the advice, have as much or as little of it as you like, but you'll take it for a lifetime because it's meant to help somebody else's teeth?
Voters medicate each other whether they want it or not. And if 51% of the voters say, we're going to medicate everybody in town, they all get medicated.
Fluoride is not an essential element.
There's not a bodily requirement for fluoride.
Fluoride is not an essential nutrient, certainly as far as the UK goes. You look it up in the books to see what our Department of Health says, and they say that no essential use has been found for fluoride in the human body. So it is not in the category of a vitamin, and apart from anything, it's miles more toxic than any other vitamins.
Whatever benefit there is from fluoride on teeth is topical rather than systemic.
It's been shown that it's really a topical effect principally rather than a systemic effect.
It's effective topically, not when it's swallowed.
There's no reason for people be exposing themselves, all their internal organs, to fluoride when, if it works, you can do something topically.
If you want to prevent sunburn, you don't drink suntan lotion, you put it on your skin. And so if you want to have the benefits of fluoride in oral health, what you do is put it on the surface of the tooth and not drink it.
The quality of evidence for topical fluoride is in a different league from the evidence on water fluoridation. I mean, absolutely no question about that.
Adding fluoride to toothpaste, you are going to ingest some of it, and that needs to be taken seriously. But it's not made to be ingested, and it's made to be rubbed onto the surface of the tooth, which is where you're supposed to have it. It's a much smarter way to go about using fluoride in dentistry.
It's widely accepted that the topical application of fluoride to the surface of teeth is beneficial. I have no dispute with that. However, I can see absolutely no justification for asking the whole population to take it systemically, to swallow it, internalize it for that benefit, because it's available in toothpastes, it's available in dental treatments at the dentist. So I don't think you can justify the fluoridation of drinking water on the lines of a topical treatment to teeth. It's illogical.
One of the recommendations I've made is because we now know that it doesn't need to be swallowed, that the public has to be informed. Again, informed consent. They should be told that it doesn't work by swallowing it.
One of the things that the proponents are very careful to stay away from is to mention how many people don't fluoridate.
Most of the Western world does not fluoridate their water. We are definitely in the minority in the fact that we push water fluoridation.
Many of the countries in the world, the developed countries, no longer fluoridate, never did fluoridate.
Most European countries do not fluoridate. Austria, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Italy, Greece, Portugal. The overwhelming number of countries in the world do not fluoridate, and guess what? Their teeth are just as good, if not better, than ours.
One of the most striking things, I suppose, was to look at trends in tooth decay over time in various countries.
The comparisons between fluoridated countries like America and unfluoridated ones like most of Europe and indeed most of the world, are very interesting.
If you look at the World Health Organization database for 12-year-olds, that tooth decay has been coming down as rapidly in these non-fluoridated European countries as it's been coming down in the United States and other fluoridated communities.
Areas that don't fluoridate have seen the same decrease in tooth decay that we have seen over the same time span.
If you ask someone to pick out the lines, the decline lines, which are in countries where water is fluoridated, from those in countries where it isn't fluoridated, actually you can't pick them out. So I found that very surprising against the background of, as I say, having been a default fluoridationist.
What you really need to look at and what matters at the end is what's your total body load.
Children are getting a lot of fluoride from a lot of different sources.
We've had a tremendous increase in fluoride from many sources. Water is one source. When we drink that water, when it's made into soda pop or it's made in beverages and made into soups, made into other products, we get fluoride from that source also.
And we also have a lot of pesticides that have come on the market that leave fluoride residues on fruits and vegetables.
Fluoride is a very common component in pesticides. And so, you know, if you drink a glass of grape juice that's a non-organic grape juice and it's got skins on it, you're going to get a very high level of fluoride just from your grape juice.
And they're also getting it from toothpaste. Studies have shown that you swallow quite a bit of toothpaste, or the children swallow quite a bit of toothpaste. Even if they're told not to swallow it, it just happens by accident. They don't rinse as well as adults, and sometimes they don't have as good swallowing actions. And therefore they're getting a lot of fluoride from that.
So who's monitoring this exposure of when are we getting too much? No one's monitoring that. Nobody's looking at the total exposure to ensure that we're not getting too much and that certain subgroups aren't getting too much.
The reality is we need to reduce our fluoride intake.
In 2005, the Center for Disease Control admitted that 32% of our children in the United States, including children in non-fluoridated areas, have dental fluorosis.
About a third of the children in this country have some form of dental fluorosis, meaning that they had too much fluoride exposure during their early childhood.
Dental fluorosis is damage to the tooth because of too much fluoride exposure. We swallowed too much fluoride and it shows up as white spots, brown spots on the teeth.
You see these white spots or splotches or lines. In more severe fluorosis, you actually see the surface layer flaking off. You see brown spots.
And in severe cases, there's actual chipping and pitting and erosion of the tooth.
Dental fluorosis is a biomarker that your child has been overexposed to fluoride during the development of their teeth.
We now believe that there are several mechanisms involved. Fluoride could be inhibiting the enzymes, the serine proteinases that are degrading the final traces of proteins that are left behind in the teeth.
The mechanisms have something to do with interference with the enamel-forming proteins or inhibition of some enzymes during that critical period.
To do that, impacting those the enamel cells in the teeth, means that it can also impact cells elsewhere in the body.
The promoters have always had this faith that you could damage the growing tooth enamel, the enzymes, the G proteins, or however that happens, without damaging any other tissue in the body at the same time. And I think that's very unlikely.
Not only is it an effect on teeth, what's happening in the teeth is very likely happening in the bone as well, because we have the similar kind of structure of hydroxyapatite mineral structure in the bone and the tooth.
Your teeth are sort of a window into the bone, a window into your skeleton.
So if there's this adverse effects going on in the teeth, there are very likely to be adverse effects going on in the bone.
It's a sign of toxicity. It is not just to be taken or dismissed as merely a cosmetic effect.
This whole debate has been captured for over 50 years by the dental lobby, by dentists whose preoccupation is teeth. Well, teeth are not the only issue in the body.
As dentists, we diagnose pathology of the mouth, diseases of the mouth. And we tend to disregard or not involve ourselves with the diseases of the rest of the body because it's not within our purview, it's not within our license to diagnose other parts of the body.
Most definitely, the dental community has had a monopoly, if you will, on the study of fluoride. And they have absolutely used tunnel vision to look at fluoride as a dental concern. However, it is not just a dental concern, it's a toxicity concern.
The National Research Council has a report that just came out in 2006, which is one of the best sources of finding out what fluoride is doing to the rest of the body.
One of the most interesting things in the report is the diversity of the number of organs that are being affected by the fluoride beyond either the teeth or the bones.
We do need to get away from looking only at fluoride in connection with teeth. We need to be considering its effect on a whole bunch of other systems in the body, on people's general health in a whole lot of respects.
I think the ADA's recent statement on warning against adding fluoridated water to baby formula is a watershed decision.
The American Dental Association has finally done what it should have done years ago, and that is to tell parents not to use fluoridated tap water to make up formula.
The American Dental Association recommends that we not have fluoridated water be used for making infant formula or for infants to drink.
One of the messages which I think is extraordinary in this whole issue is that the level of fluoride in mother's milk is so extremely low. It's 0.004 parts per million, which is 250 times less than we put in the drinking water.
There have been a couple men who have said, well, maybe mother's milk is flawed, but most scientists don't go that route. They say mother's milk seems to be the best we have, the best we know of, and if it's low in fluoride, maybe that's what we should have for infants, is low fluoride.
Nature has devised a system for keeping fluoride away from the infant, and we're circumventing that by putting fluoride into drinking water, and I think there are consequences.
I think parents should know that fluoride is an extremely active chemical when it gets into our body. It can interfere with the pineal gland. It can interfere with the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland and the pineal gland are both intimately involved with brain development, mental development.
A real concern with young kids, especially with newborn infants, is that the blood-brain barrier is not fully developed at that point, and when children are drinking a formula made with fluoridated drinking water, they're getting a huge an inappropriate dose of fluoride in the developing brain. And this may be part of the reason, for instance, of the depression of IQ that we've seen in these Chinese studies.
You do not want to create a fluoride exposure during a period of brain vulnerability.
All of these things are indicators, serious indicators, that you shouldn't expose young babies to fluoride. And of course that's exactly what happens when you put fluoride in the water.
How are low-income kids supposed to, or low-income families, supposed to avoid giving their kids fluoridated water?
They can't afford to avoid it. They can't afford to seek sources of drinking water that has no fluoride in it.
I think that the low-income communities could be at higher risk for adverse effects from fluoride exposure or from water fluoridation.
As far as I can see, there is no doubt that the intake of fluoridated water is going to interrupt basic functions of nerve cells in the brain.
The NRC committee did review the available information on fluoride effects on the brain, on neurological function, and we concluded that there does seem to be evidence for some effects. There needs to be more study of several areas. There certainly seem to be effects on the developing brain, but there may also be effects on the brain in older individuals as well.
The research on the brain since our study was published has absolutely confirmed what we predicted and what we reported in 1995.
There are now 30 animal studies which indicate that fluoride could damage the brain. And this comes on top of a number of studies from China which indicates that fluoride lowers IQ in children.
I mean, there's lots of epidemiological evidence now that, for example, it might affect the intelligence of the child, coming out of China, and that's been reviewed by the National Academy of Sciences. They say that you can't be absolutely certain about it, but there's quite a strong indication, and we need further research.
In my view, fluoride today, as far as intelligence in the brain is concerned, is where lead was in the early 70s. In the early 70s, scientists knew that high levels of lead could cause brain damage in children and other health effects, but they felt that subclinical levels of lead were okay. I think the same thing is happening now with fluoride, that it's only a function of getting more and more sensitive tests to show that even lower levels of fluoride can cause lowering of IQ and other subtle effects.
You know, while these bits of further research are going on to elucidate what the absolute truth is, we should be taking a more precautionary stance and saying, okay, for the time being, we don't fluoridate.
The concern about fluoride and the effect on the thyroid is multifold.
Fluoride was used to suppress hyperactive thyroid, especially in Europe back in the 40s and 50s. And the doses that were used to suppress thyroid activity are now in the range that people are getting in the U.S. from this vast overexposure to fluoride.
There's a consistent body of literature that indicates that fluoride exposure does reduce thyroid function in humans and in experimental animals, and that the exposures in humans associated with these effects are in the range of exposures that are expected with people who drink fluoridated water.
A large percentage of the population of the United States does have some problem with the thyroid gland.
The large number of people who have hypothyroid, underactive thyroid now, may very well be related to the fact that there's so much fluoride in the environment.
The ingestion of fluoride does affect the actions of the thyroid gland.
A hypothyroid individual should definitely be concerned about drinking fluoridated water because it would take a very serious clinical condition and it could make it even worse.
The effects of hypothyroidism, even probably borderline hypothyroidism, are things like depression, lethargy. When a person just doesn't feel like getting up and doing anything, there are obviously a lot of things that can cause that, but low thyroid function is among them, and low thyroid function is a contributor to depression in some, perhaps many people.
We have several studies, as a matter of fact, in the United States that have shown that fluoride can increase bone fracture rates.
Peer-reviewed studies in prestigious journals such as the Journal of the American Medical Association that's showing increased risk of bone fracture based on the amount of fluoride that a person consumes, and consuming it in the level that people get from drinking fluoridated drinking water.
We do know from animal studies that the strength of the bone actually starts to decline the more fluoride you have in the bone. The fluoride makes the bone more brittle.
Sufficient accumulation of fluoride in the bones seems to make them weaker. It makes them more dense on X-ray film, but this is associated with a more brittle structure.
And of course, we're concerned about hip fractures because that's a huge cost to the healthcare system.
Hip fracture in the elderly, in all too many cases, means that that person is not going to walk again or will even die.
It's well known in the endemic fluorosis areas that the first sign of skeletal fluorosis is aching joints.
The early stages of skeletal fluorosis are associated with bone and joint pain.
Fluoride causes symptoms identical to arthritis.
You cannot distinguish the fluorosis or early fluoride poisoning from rheumatoid or osteoarthritis. It's very much the same.
Nobody, to my knowledge, has yet looked carefully at fluoridated cities or fluoridated populations and looked at the symptoms of arthritis to determine whether or not fluoride is contributing to this endemic or possibly epidemic of arthritis that we have in North America.
I think there's every reason to be concerned that today fluoride is one of the factors contributing to the epidemic of arthritis in this country. According to the CDC, 1 in 3 American adults have some form of arthritis. That's 68 million Americans.
Supposedly the fluoride exposures in this country are not usually high enough to get to skeletal fluorosis, but again, that's an area that really has not been studied well. I think it's likely, it's not a given, but I think it's likely that a lot of early stage skeletal fluorosis does show up as bone and joint pain, but it's never recognized as being skeletal fluorosis.
If I was an arthritic individual, I would be eliminating every possible source of fluoride exposure that I could think of.
If you ask most dentists and ask them what they're putting in the water, most dentists would say sodium fluoride, pharmaceutical sodium fluoride, the same stuff that is in toothpaste.
They have absolutely no idea that it's, in 9 out of 10 cases, hydrofluorosilicic acid, and that hydrofluorosilicic acid is a waste product for the phosphate industry.
This has come about because for maybe 100 years, the phosphate fertilizer industry put out 2 very, very poisonous gases into the environment, hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride. Eventually, they were required to capture those, and they did it with a wet spray, water, and that water converts these 2 very toxic gases into hexafluorosilicic acid. And it's this scrubbing liquor, which is about 25% strong, is put into tanker trucks, driven around the country, and added to our drinking water.
If this stuff goes out the stack, it's an air pollutant. If it goes directly into the water supply, if they take that scrubber liquor and dump it into the local river, it's a water pollutant. But if they put it into a tank wagon and sell it to somebody, a water authority, like magic, it's not a pollutant. And they can take that then to your drinking water supply and not discharge it into your river. They discharge it directly into your drinking water supply, slowly bleed it in, and as magic, it's no longer a toxic pollutant. It's now what's called a product.
It's never purified. It's not a pharmaceutical grade compound. It's a mixture of whatever that collects in the stack gases. And it contains lots of contaminants, a lot of heavy metals.
When you're talking about adding fluoride to drinking water, you're not just talking about adding fluoridation chemicals. You're talking about adding all of the industrial waste byproducts that come along with it. In Oregon, where we've got 135 communities that already exceed the drinking water standards for arsenic, the idea of adding any more arsenic to drinking water, even if it's a small amount, just doesn't make a lot of sense. I find very few people who actually, with an open mind, read through the science, understand the significance of the questions and what the direction that all the new science is pointing in terms of the risks of fluoride, who still go on to say we ought to force it into everybody's drinking water.
We have better ways of improving dental health today than using fluoridation. And let's be sensible about it.
It doesn't work systemically. It works topically.
It is unethical. It is unnecessary, it's ineffective, it's dangerous.
I mean, this is so obvious. It's so really very, very far-fetched. You have the teeth there, they are available for you. Why drink the stuff?
You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. And we're back. I'm Michael Wordsworth. This is Breaking Down the News. The time is 4:25, Friday, 2012. And I'd like to mention that we broadcast out of 2 streams here. The MP3 stream, which is the pure audio, had an overlapping show playing simultaneously during the beginning of my first half hour. This is a major bummer, but we'll never experience this again. However, if you catch out this show on the archived Ustream, The track will be legible, or the equivalent of audible, and I encourage you to go check that out. We're going to switch gears now from fluoride in Milwaukee. I'm going to go national and global with the coverage of the Bilderberg meetings. The Bilderberg meetings in Chantilly, Virginia. If you haven't heard of this, I'm sure there's not much in the headline news regarding this subject, but it is very important. These people are getting together from all over the world, meeting here in Chantilly, Virginia, at a hotel with lots of security to decide what's going to happen in your country, your state, your city, and your community. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I mention on the show a global cabal of elitists gaining control over our country, over our world. When we come back, we're going to provide you an in-depth coverage of these Bilderberg meetings as they are going on all this week. I'm Michael Wordsworth. Thank you for listening today. We'll be back in 2 seconds with the Bilderberg Group. You're going to love it. You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. The U.S. media blackout on Bilderberg has been broken, with the Washington Times being the first mainstream U.S. news outlet to cover the gathering of over 100 power brokers in Chantilly, Virginia, which kicks off today, but the Washington Post remains mute. Despite the fact that dozens of the most powerful and influential people on the planet are meeting today in our own backyard, the Washington Post, which itself is routinely represented at Bilderberg via its publisher Donald Graham, has failed to even mention this event thus far. Expect the Post to only report on the conference once it's wrapped up. Bilderberg relies on big media to ignore their meetings so as to not draw more press attention while the summit is in progress. In a separate story, numerous prominent Canadian newspapers, including the Calgary Herald, are reporting on criticism leveled against Alberta Premier Alison Redford following her announcement that she will attend the meeting at a cost of $19,000 to taxpayers. Security tighter than ever at Bilderberg conference. Secretive meeting only invites curiosity. Chantilly's Westfield's Marriott Hotel is the site of an unprecedented security crackdown as the world's richest and most powerful arrive for the annual Bilderberg Conference. Hundreds of demonstrators are expected to protest this highly secretive gathering, which kicks off Thursday and lasts through the weekend. The off-the-record meeting, well known in conspiracy lore, but typically given little to no media attention each year, once again will bring together heads of state, billionaire bankers, leading businessmen, and other international movers and shakers. A perimeter of about 1.5 miles has been set up around the Northern Virginia Hotel, and all non-Bilderberg guests reportedly were kicked out of their rooms. A photographer for the Washington Times was told by law enforcement Wednesday that any attempts to get close to the building would result in arrest, and arrests have occurred. Tight security is nothing new at the infamous meeting, but more press coverage in recent years, driven largely by social media and radio host Alex Jones, among others, has led organizers to thicken the protective shell around the conference to new heights, and thus further feeding the rumor mill. Quote, "This year, it's the biggest ever. The security is leveraged up big time. It's unprecedented," Mr. Jones said, one of the loudest Bilderberg critics. Jim Tucker, and there's one other guy, too, that's really prominent on this issue. Well, Alex Jones said in an interview Wednesday after he and his staff were told to remove themselves from the hotel or risk arrest. But Fairfax County Police say that some reports, including rumors on Twitter and elsewhere, that law enforcement personnel have threatened would-be trespassers with machine guns, are being blown out of proportion. This quote comes from the officer Shelley Broderick, County Police spokeswoman. She told the Times, the New York Times, quote, obviously police officers carry guns. That's part of the deal. Obviously, we're aware of this meeting. We do have officers working with the hotel and the Bilderberg organization just to make sure everything goes fine. We're working to make sure everything goes okay. Well, ma'am, you're ensuring that foreign interests will take over, control, and regulate the American people's laws, tax rates, fees, fines, service rates. Is that okay? Well, the official Bilderberg guest list is kept under wraps as the specific topics for discussion are not revealed. Rumored to be at the top of the agenda this year is the European financial crisis. Frequent attendees, including Henry A. Kissinger and David Rockefeller, are expected to attend again. A copy of last year's guest list leaked to a journalist covering the conference offers a window into just how much the influence of Bilderberg guests wield. Google Chairman Eric Schmidt, World Bank President Robert B. Zoellick, European Central Bank President Jean-Claude Trichet. Listen to this list of guests. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands and Greek Minister of Finance George Papa. Now, they got this spelled wrong, but Papakonstantinou were reportedly among those in attendance at the 2011 meeting in Switzerland. What a list of attendees here. I mean, these are the movers and shakers. Should you be concerned? You definitely should be concerned. Global business titans. Government officials and political figures rounded out the guest list of more than 100. Though skeptics suspect dozens of names, especially of high-profile individuals, are kept off of it. The Bilderberg organization releases virtually no information about the meeting. Its website, bilderbergmeetings.org, states that the yearly conference, quote, is a small, flexible, informal, and off-the-record international forum in which different viewpoints can be expressed and mutually understanding enhanced, end quote. It goes on to explain that at meetings, no resolutions are proposed. Well, that's a lie. No votes taken. They make and break presidents there. Rick Perry attended the meeting at the last 2 years ago, came back as a presidential candidate. What? You're not deciding anything at these meetings? Well, we're going to break that rumor. It's true. They decide our fate there. They say no policy statements are issued. Lies, lies, I tell you, do not believe them. The conference gets its name from the first meeting. This is where the Bilderberg name comes from. In 1954, at the Bilderberg Hotel in the Netherlands. Critics say the organization's benign description doesn't come close to reality. It is at Bilderberg's annual meeting they argue that the world's real rulers make major decisions with global implications, such as choosing future political leaders. Indeed, I thought that's what our voting process was for. Some say the group also is laying the groundwork for an eventual one world government, for plans to impose worldwide population control, and for using such global issues as climate change to repeal democracy or free speech. What is discussed behind closed doors this year likely will remain secret, but the sheer level of security and precautions taken to keep the conference below the radar has piqued public curiosity and concern. They do have moles, people that actually are in these events, and they do their best to bring us the information that was said. Each and every year, we get information leaked by those inside this group. Somebody has a heart or a brain in there. They're sticking in it, probably at their own risk of peril. And the information is leaked out. As soon as we get what information was decided this year at this meeting, I'll let you know. In the meantime, I'm going to cover this issue. It's heavy. Bilderbergs, this day on Friday, breaking down the news. I'm Michael Wordsworth. These are definitely words worth listening to. Back in 2 seconds. You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. Why does the mainstream media ignore the Bilderberg Group? There's a good reason. Over the next several days, more than 100 of the most powerful people on the planet will attend a secret conference at a hotel in Chantilly, Virginia. Some of the biggest names in politics and business will be there. The hotel is going to be completely locked down and will be swarmed by hordes of security guards carrying machine guns. This conference is so important that even the U.S. Secret Service is rumored to be involved in providing security. These meetings have been held yearly since 1954, but no record of what goes on at all has ever been officially released to the public, and all the attendees are sworn to secrecy. Decisions made at this conference will affect the lives of every man, woman, and child on the planet, but the vast majority of Americans will have no idea that the Bilderberg Group is meeting about 20 miles from Washington, D.C. this year because the mainstream media in the United States ignores the Bilderberg Group almost entirely year after year. Based on the coverage it gets from the U.S. media, you would think that the Bilderberg Group was a non-event. But if some of the most powerful people on the planet are getting together to discuss our future, don't you think the mainstream media should be covering it? The Bilderberg Group is much more than just a social club. It has played a major role in shaping the direction of the world since it was created in 1954. The Bilderberg Group helped create the European Union, and it helped create the euro. This year, efforts to save the euro are rumored to be high on the agenda. And considering the big names that show up at this conference on a yearly basis, you would think that the U.S. media would be extremely interested in this. The following is just a sample of the big names that have attended the Bilderberg in recent years. You won't believe it, but when you hear this list, you'll understand. This is what's going on behind the scene. You don't want all these people gathered together in one room deciding your fate. Listen to this list of names. On the top of the list, Bill Clinton. No kidding. George H.W. Bush. Prince Charles. David Cameron. Tony Blair. Henry Kissinger. Bill Gates. Angela Merkel. She's the premier for Germany. Ben Bernanke, Timothy Geithner, Rick Perry, David Evil Rockefeller, Herman Van Rompuy, Jean-Claude Trichet, Jeff Bezos, Chris R. Hughes, Eric Schmidt, Craig J. Mundy, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, Richard Pearl, Paul Volcker, Lawrence Summers, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden, the nation's vice president. My goodness. Isn't that enough star power to get the attention of the mainstream media? A complete list of the official attendees of the Bilderberg Group from last year can be found easily online. You would think that this would be big news, but apparently there is so much else going on in the world that there isn't any room to cover the Bilderberg Group. For example, right now on USA Today, you can find the following headlines on the front page. Trilogies spring up on the reading list. Spelling still matters in era of texting spell check. Many chain stores now add a toy aisle for adults. I mean, who cares? These are superficial, silly issues. The ones that you need to pay attention to is the one we're talking to about right now today on Breaking Down the News. Perhaps other news sources are discussing more important news. Then again, perhaps they're not. On the front page of CNN, you can currently find the following headlines. Airline seat squeeze, it's not just you. Group, prove Romney's not a unicorn. I mean, this is an issue. We know Romney is not a unicorn. Scientists confirm old person smell. Yes, sometimes old people do tend to smell. No wonder CNN is experiencing record low television ratings. The mainstream media may be ignoring Bilderberg, but based on the level of security around the hotel, you would want to be tempted to think that it was the most important event in the United States this year. A recent article by Paul Joseph Watson discussed some of the extraordinary security measures that are being implemented to protect this conference. Paul Joseph Watson quotes, undercover Fairfax Police, Secret Service, hotel security, as well as diplomatic service personnel are all now rushing to finalize preparations for the arrival of Bilderberg members tomorrow morning. According to London Guardian journalist Charlie Skelton, conference organizers were also using iPhones to film guests who had arrived for brunch. Regular guests as well as journalists are also having background checks run against their names. Alex Jones also heard discussions between members of Bilderberg security about how a sophisticated surveillance equipment using satellites was being used to tap phones of prominent activists and media personalities set to cover this event. So why doesn't the mainstream media want to cover this? In the past, a number of top politicians, including future U.S. presidents, have attended Bilderberg prior to getting elected to very important positions. A recent WorldNet Daily article detailed a few examples of this phenomenon. George Herbert Walker Bush attended in 1985. He became president in 1988. Bill Clinton attended in 1991, and he became president a year later. Tony Blair attended in 93, became Prime Minister of England in 97. Romano Prodi attended in 1999. Later that year, he became president of the European Union Commission. In 2004, Senator John Edwards spoke to the group. He was later anointed the Democratic vice presidential nominee by presidential candidate John Kerry. It is even rumored that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton held a secret meeting at Bilderberg back in 2008. Rumored? It's pretty evident that that's what happened. If you remember, President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton bailed on their press team, took another jet, and met secretly at this meeting. Amazingly, there are indications that Barack Obama may have held a little pre-Bilderberg meeting again this year. According to the Economic Policy Journal, Obama snuck away from reporters on Saturday for some mysterious reason. Of note, this is a quote from the article. Of note, President Obama disappeared this weekend. Reporters were miffed. Was it a pre-Bilderberg meeting for the prez? On Saturday, West Wing Report had these odd tweets. President arrived 1:10 ET, Eastern Standard Time, at Andrews Golf Course, playing today with regulars Marvin Nicholson, Walt Nicholson, and Pete Selfridge. President back at the White House. In a breach of long-standing policy, his motorcade departed without hooking up with the waiting press vans. Poole does not know firsthand when the president left Andrews, what route he took, or when he arrived at the White House. Press Poole always accompanies the president wherever he goes. Decades-long tradition violated again. Remember, if the president meets someone outside the White House, it hasn't logged in on White House records, and there is no record if the press aren't there to record it. So where did President Obama go during that missing time, and why did he ditch the press? They will probably never tell us. The truth is that the mainstream media is the biggest gatekeeper of all. They decide what is important and what is not important. Not you, not me. They decide what is going to be in the news and what the American people are going to be talking about. They choose to totally ignore the Bilderberg Group, and so most Americans will not even hear about it this year. And that is really sad. The truth is that those that attend Bilderberg have big plans for all of us. David Evil Rockefeller, a regular attendee at Bilderberg meetings, wrote the following in a 2003 book entitled memoirs. I'm going to try and do my David Rockefeller impersonation, but it probably won't be that good. But this is what it said right out of his book. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interest of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it. End quote. I don't know about you, but I don't like the fact that a bunch of elitists are holding secret conferences where they discuss how to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. The future of America should be in the hands of the American people, not in the hands of secretive global elitists that desire to shape the world in their own image. Please share this information and other articles you can find about the Bilderberg Group with as many people as you can. The mainstream media is not doing their job, so it's up to all of us to get that truth out. I'm Michael Wordsworth. We'll be back with more coverage of the Bilderberg meeting. The Bilderberg meeting is illegal. This article from Kurt Nemo, Infowars.com, May 31st, 2012. On June 6, 2008, we reported on Obama and Hillary secretly attending the Bilderberg meeting held at Marriott Hotel in Chantilly, Virginia. Henry Kissinger has racked up dozens of felony offenses over the years. The rendezvous was kept secret for a good reason. Obama and Hillary had committed a felony. A felony. It is illegal for unauthorized citizens to negotiate with foreign governments under the Logan Act, a law passed under the John Adams administration in 1799. Let me read exactly what the Logan Act is. Any citizen of the United States, wherever he may be, who, without authority of the United States, directly or indirectly commences or carries on any correspondence or intercourse with any foreign government or any officer or agent thereof, with intent to influence the measures or conduct of any foreign government or of any officer or agent thereof in relation to any disputes or controversies with the United States, or to defeat the measures of the United States, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. If you look at the official Bilderberg participant list, the Bilderbergs now posted on their official website, you will see a large number of U.S. citizens, including Massachusetts Senator John Kerry, the governor of Indiana, a national security advisor, and a large number of bankers, business CEOs, and assorted others, all of them in violation of the law and should be arrested immediately. But then, nobody has ever been convicted or arrested under the Logan Act law. The only known indictment ever under the Logan Act was one that occurred in 1803, when a grand jury indicted Francis Flournoy, F-L-O-U-R-N-O-Y, a Kentucky farmer who published an article in the Frankfurt Guardian of Freedom. How do you like that? In 1803, a Kentucky farmer can publish an article in the Frankfurt Guardian, and he gets busted for violation of the Logan Act when you've got President Obama. Well, we don't know for sure that he was there, but we do have video coverage of all these other CEOs and banksters, as I call them, attending this very meeting. Oh, poor Mr. Flournoy had advocated a separate nation in the western part of the United States allied with France, I guess. And then there was the case of John D. Martin, a prisoner of war in North Korea, who was court-martialed for collaborating with North Korea and conducting, quote, re-education classes. The case was dismissed. In 1967, the government wanted to use the act against Stokely Carmichael for a visit he made to Hanoi during the Vietnam War. Carmichael was never charged. Of course, when it comes to the titans of industry, bankers and globalists, the act is irrelevant. These folks operate on their own legal and moral plateau. Considering their other crimes, war, mass murder, the theft of trillions, and other assorted monumental scams and felonies, violating the Logan Act really pales in comparison. It would be nice, though, if one or two of the cops now surrounding the Marriott in Chantilly marched into the meeting and arrested a few of the traitors, beginning with David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger. I'm Michael Wordsworth. We'll be back in 2 seconds. Don't go away. You're listening to RiverWestRadio.com. Around 150 of the world's elite approached the grounds of Suburban Virginia Hotel on Thursday for the first day of the 2012 Bilderberg Conference. But also on hand were throngs of protesters who gathered to oppose the top-secret meeting. Journalists and critics of the annual clandestine conference stationed themselves outside of Chantilly at the Virginia Marriott Hotel near Washington, D.C., early Thursday to catch a glimpse of the government officials, entrepreneurs, and other assorted members of the privileged elite who had gathered for this year's event. I'm going to play for you a special news coverage. This is Russia Today interviewing Alex Jones, who is live at the Bilderberg Convention this year, 2012, protesting with hundreds of others, united. Their slogan, the answer to 1984 is 1976. Check it out. It's a great interview.
Well, every year there is a meeting of the mind, so to speak, organized for the 100 or so people, very powerful. Now, this is invite only, and the last few meetings have taken place at venues such as the Astor Place Resort in Athens, Greece, the Hotel Dolce in Spain, and the Suvretta House in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Well, this year is scheduled to take place at the Westfield Marriott Hotel, not too far from here, in Chantilly, Virginia. All right, so here's a look at the hotel from the outside, and that's all most people will see during this conference set to take place May 31st to June 3rd, as the hotel is totally booked and will be on lockdown. We were curious, though, about what this hotel is all about. Take a look at this. Here's the website to the Marriott, where the conference is being held. It brags that it captures the elegance of Northern Virginia's colonial estates in a resort-like setting. And that's not all. This Chantilly, Virginia hotel offers a 24-hour fitness center, an indoor and outdoor pool, plus those who stay have access to the signature Westfield Fred Couples Golf Club, where no doubt some important conversations will be had. Now in the hotel there's Westfield's restaurant with the award-winning Sunday champagne brunch, a pub for those needed nightcaps, and of course, Starbucks coffee. Well, there's a 40,000 square foot conference center with award-winning catering, state-of-the-art audio-visual services, and wireless internet. So that's a look at the location for this year's Bilderberg Conference. Let's talk now about what might be going on inside. Alex Jones is the host of The Alex Jones Show. And Alex, I know that you and your team are no stranger to this hotel, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But let me first get your take on what you supposed might be discussed and decided behind closed doors there.
Well, they had their meeting there 4 years ago, and that's where they chose to have Hillary step down and for Obama to become the presumptive nominee for the Democrats there in Denver in the 2008 DNC meeting. And for an entire day, the media in Virginia and in D.C. was saying, "Where's Obama? Where's Obama?" And we were there saying, he's inside, the Secret Service is there. We had inside sources that he indeed was there with Hillary. And years later that came out, but the mainstream media would not cover it at that time. And so I think some of the same things will be discussed. Should the elite get behind Mitt Romney or Barack Obama? Both men are bought and paid for by the same financial interest, and so the discussion will be which candidate can basically con the American people into laying down to tyranny for another 4 years. They'll undoubtedly be discussing wars with Iran, ways to censor the internet. That's been discussed in past years. The head of Google and others were attending in Switzerland last year when my team covered it. So they're going to be discussing a lot of things. Also, how to sell the public on more banker bailouts, that is, more taxpayer money paid to the private banks that have hijacked our country. And they'll also be discussing how to ram through carbon taxes because their environmental hoax has imploded.
But Alex, I mean, when you talk about the decision being made about which candidate to support, I mean, we still, have a system in this country where people go to vote. When you talk about future policies being made, we still do have a process. Legislation has to be written, laws have to be voted on. I guess I'm just wondering how this Bilderberg conference is, different than any other, meeting that important people have, lawmakers have when they have dinner or play golf together already.
Sure. Some of the minutes of Bilderberg have been leaked over the years, and Bilderberg's confirmed that it's been theirs. We've covered them at Infowars.com. The BBC has covered them. And the Bilderberg group set up officially in 1954 in Oosterbeek, Holland, with Prince Bernhard and others establishing it, has always been pushing for one world corporate fascist government. And up until about 5-6 years ago, the mainstream media in this country, the United States, but also in Europe, would not even say it existed. They would admit that the Trilateral Commission, Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove did. But they would say Bilderberg didn't exist. And so we know from past research that the 125 elitists that meet there and their 20 or so guests really do discuss policy behind closed doors and make a lot of important decisions. They also have 3 or 4 Bilderberg steering committee meetings over the next year. So this is one of the most important globalist meetings ever. David Rockefeller in his memoirs has written about that. Royalty attends this, and this is one of the most important confabs out there. And Hillary Clinton was fined back in the 90s hundreds of thousands of dollars for attending Bilderberg when she was in the Clinton White House and discussing policy at the event, violating the Logan Act. Wow. So policy is being set there, and this is one of the most elite meetings out there.
Let's talk more about what you were just kind of touching on, which is that most of the mainstream media doesn't cover this. They observe sort of a blackout covering Bilderberg. Security is tightly controlled, and those who do get in, as you say, they've got to keep their lips sealed. But what if the media wanted to cover this, especially being that it's in Virginia this year? I know you and your team had an experience trying to get some access in the past. What would people encounter if they asked for, say, a press pass to Bilderberg?
Well, they won't even tell you that it exists when you go there. But then separately, because of pressure the last few years, they have created a website. They do put out a list of who's there, but generally that's disinformation. Some of the people on the list aren't there. A lot of people that are there are not on the list. In fact, some of the most important names. So I don't expect the mainline U.S. media to cover this year because for so many decades they told their readers and viewers it didn't exist and you were insane. So I think there is the big story. That shows you how powerful it is. The media for 50 years has covered Bohemian Grove. A lot of big decisions get made there. The media for decades has covered Skull and Bones. They will not cover Bilderberg. Now, because of the alternative media and RT and the Drudge Report and others starting to cover it, because of that, and because the alternative media has become so dominant now, the Washington Post 2 weeks ago came out and admitted that that Senator Rubio was going to the South American conference to be part of an unofficial Bilderberg steering meeting. Anybody who knows about Bilderberg knows that the first media ever allowed in 54, was the head of the Graham family at Bilderberg in Europe. And so every year since then, either the son or the mother or the CEO of the Washington Post media empire attends, and they would never report on it. Now, 2 weeks ago, in a big column, they basically go, yeah, Rubio wants to be vetted by Bilderberg. He wants to up his international cred at Bilderberg coming up in early June, so he's going to this conference.
And Alex, for those of our viewers who don't know, just give us a little nuts and bolts recap of what happened when you tried to get into the hotel the last time around.
Well, I checked in 2 days before they shut it down and kick you out, and I had security walk up after I checked in and said, "Alex Jones, don't you dare try to steal anything." And I said, "Well, I don't steal. I don't have a criminal record." And then I go in my hotel room, and the fire alarm goes off. And then they come out and accuse me of doing it and told me I was trying to steal vases. In fact, they'd said, don't try to steal vases during fire alarms.
But now you weren't able to be in the hotel when the conference was going on.
Sure, no. Then they kicked me out. And then they had cars following us, people breaking into our hotel rooms, threatening phone calls, all sorts of stuff, military in plain clothes, harassing us. I mean, it was bizarre. But Jim Tucker got shot at in Portugal, back in, I think it was 1991. So this is wild. I mean, in the past, they really wanted to be secretive. Now that their cover is blown, they admit that they basically exist, but say that they're just a meeting, discussing policy in a free and open way, and that's why they have the secrecy. But the New York Times, a few years after I infiltrated, attacked my film, The Obama Deception, and said that I was at the Westfields Marriott in Virginia having a hallucination.
Oh, goodness.
And that I was insane and that nothing even happened there. And remember, the whole media is looking for Obama and Hillary. We're there. They're there. The Secret Service motorcade is there. And the national media would not come and cover it. That's how powerful Bilderberg is. And I'm calling in closing, I'm calling to occupy Bilderberg, to protest it, and I'm calling for tens of thousands to be there coming up in 1 month.
All right. Well, you keep us posted on what you see, and we'll certainly keep our eyes there as well, since it is sort of, relatively speaking, in our backyard this year. Alex Jones, host of The Alex Jones Show. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And we're back. We're going to close up the show. We have Ingrid's Inspirational Hour coming up. It's going to be a wonderful show for her and for you. I'm Michael Wordsworth. Thank you for listening. We'll be back. Take care.
As a result of fluoridation, our children will be healthier and happier.